And it's truly my honor now to introduce one of the pioneers and global leaders in the women's funding movement, Christine Grum.
So I have a very complicated setup here. Between my scarf, I had to wear my purse up here, not because I don't trust any of you, but I know you are fundraising for an endowment, so I thought I'd better take the checkbook with me. But it's holding my lavalier mic here, so it truly is a pleasure. I didn't only spend some time here. I graduated from Monterey High, actually. Went to Walter Colton, graduated from Monterey High, went to MPC, worked for Planned Parenthood, so I have a long history here on the peninsula. It always, last night when I was driving down from the airport, I just flown in from San Diego, and I was bebopping to some rather loud music at 10:30 at night driving through. I was remembering at the time when I was dating a guy in San Francisco and would drive home at 2 o'clock in the morning to get here in a VW Bug, no seatbelt. I don't know exactly how the engine even survived. And I just thought to myself, Chris, you are one lucky woman. So today, my remarks are going to focus on 3 words: passion, opportunity, and investment. And these 3 words have the power actually to make a major difference, not only in your life, but in the lives of women and girls here in Monterey County. How we choose to live our lives depends very much on how much passion we let into our lives. And then, once we let it in, what we're willing to do with it. Passion, these are a couple quotes on passion. I'm always go on the internet and find kind of quotes attached to the words. Passion and purpose go hand in hand. When you discover your purpose, you'll normally find it's something you're tremendously passionate about. Or this is one of my favorite. Chase down your passion like it's the last bus of the night. You know, I mean, can you just see it happening? Bam, 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 bam. Well, 3 months ago, my 6 siblings, there's 7 kids in my family, partners, grandchildren, finally laid my mom to rest beside my dad. She had died in November up in Portland after a prolonged illness. We were bringing her ashes down. My father is buried at Golden Gate Veterans Cemetery. So one of the things that we were going to do is we were going to stop by the cemetery, do a brief family service, bury them, and then all the siblings came to Monterey because this is the last place that we all actually lived together under one roof. And we were going to spend the weekend just kind of remembering them and celebrating their life. So we got to the cemetery. I had made all the arrangements ahead of time. I thought everything was done. We get to the office in the cemetery, and the woman there, my 6 siblings are around me because we're signing some papers, and the woman there says, well, you know, you can have a joint headstone. What would you like to say on it? I said, we are 5 minutes away from burying them. We're going to come up with a saying? Give me a break. But in the midst of all of that, we all looked at each other, and suddenly popped into our head the phrase, my life began when I met you. That was the phrase that we heard over and over again from my parents when they told their love story. The story, now that story could end here and you could say, oh, that Chris Grum, she has kind of sentimental stories, wasn't that cute? You know, and it is the story of 2 wonderful people who had 50 years together. Yet instead of it being the ending, it was the beginning manifestation of the passion of those 2 people for family, community, and making a difference in the world around them. It was the beginning of the passion journey to change the world through hospitality, community building, activism, and social justice. It was a journey they shared with not only their children, but their grandchildren, and the many people they came into contact with in their lives. 2 generations later, as we were saying goodbye to them, we reflected on the passion imprint they had left on our lives and our vocations we had chosen, reflecting the social justice my father preached from the pulpit, he was a Lutheran minister, and the social justice my mother acted upon every day when she did her work out in the community. They influenced people to go out and make a difference in the world. And because it didn't matter to them who you were, there was always an opportunity to be a change agent. They planted seeds with all they came into contact with to bear fruit for generations to come. Now, how was that passion journey for me? How was it built? I just want to share a few things with you because I want you to think today about your passion journey for women and girls. Well, for me, it began in the Hawaiian territories in the 50s, where my father was a Lutheran minister. It had yet to become a state. From a young age, our home was a place where a lot of people were coming and going. All the missionaries from the Asian countries used to stop off in Hawaii. And I used to say to my parents, I slept more often not in my bed than in my bed over time. My siblings would say I'm just a whiner. But what was really important in that is the diversity that came through those doors that taught us about how the world changes in a variety of different ways. And part of being in Hawaii is you make leis for everybody, and we had to find a good source of plumerias and bougainvilleas. So my mom made a deal with the Buddhist priests down the street because their cemetery had the best plumeria and bougainvillea leis. So that's where she'd take her little 7 towhead kids down there, and we'd be picking away. And again, in the midst of that, learn something about the diversity of the world and how different people live in different ways. Early on, my early fundraising, in fact, if you get me a couple gin and tonics, I could actually sing this for you, but it's way too early in the morning, is I learned to sing Jesus Loves Me in Hawaiian, and then do koathi beads, because those would be sold at the Hawaiian missionary festivals, and that's how the work was funded in many years. I always considered that my early training for my vocation in fundraising. Dinner for us was not just our family, it was anybody who was in the neighborhood, and I mean neighborhood in the broad sense. The topics discussed were anything from politics to our dating lives. And then when we moved to Monterey, we'd bring friends home, and before they actually got a meal of my mother's fabulous home cooking, they would have to do a stint on the picket line because she was in charge of the picket line for the United Farm Workers. So, you know, it was like, you know, this is what you did to get food. But their passion for community made a difference in the world. And it was not only us they were influencing, but that passion permeated everybody they came into touch with. You know, it was their passion that moved me, frankly, to work for women and girls and the equality and justice of women and girls. It was that passion that taught me that you can't do that work if it's not funded. Somebody has to raise the money. It was that passion that I experienced working for the Women's Funding Network, which Toby says is like over 160 women's funds, of which you're a part of it. I watched these two people make a difference in people's lives, whether it was giving money to support human rights work in El Salvador, or hunger in this country, or on the picket line, or from the pulpit, wherever it was. Everybody was expected to make a difference that came into contact with them. Big or small, whatever the effort was, it was celebrated. Because it was together, we were stronger, bigger heart, bigger voice. It's passion that fuels the creating the change in the world. And it is that what many people are actually looking for. And today, as we celebrate the work of the Women's Fund of Monterey County, as well as the creation of this endowment, we want to be focused on the passion that is going to change some of those statistics that Toby talked to you about. Women and girls disproportionately take on the burden of violence and poverty, not only in this county, not only in this country, but around the world. That is disproportionate to what they're doing. And yet, when we have the opportunity to raise the voices of those most vulnerable, those are the voices of hope for us. And that's the birthing of hope, not only for their future, but for ours. When Toby told those stories to you of those two women, this is not just about them. This is about us and our communities and how we want to live in our world together. Making hope come alive from Salinas to King City to Carmel Valley, from Seaside to Monterey, and all in between. That's what this Women's Fund is about. So I ask you today, what's your passion story? Who connected that to you? Was it a mother, a grandmother, a father, an aunt, an experience, a grantee partner? Whoever it was, how does that give you fuel to do this really important work? As Toby said to you, women and girls continue to be the poorest in this country. You know about the violence that women are affected by around the world and here in Monterey County. You know that females take the brunt. But you know what the other amazing thing about this? This is not just a deficit story. This is an asset story because we in this country as women have the opportunity to change those issues. We have the resources, we have the education, absolutely, we have the influence, and the question for us is, how do we do that? Now, when the early founders of the Women's Fund here in Monterey got together and said, we want to start a Women's Fund, and you know when they got to the part about having to raise money, that everybody said, oh, let me do it, let me do it. I'll be right there. Okay, well, okay, that's in your fantasy life fundraisers. That's in your fantasy life. But they were so passionate. They were so passionate that they were willing to put aside their conflict and all the things we all feel about fundraising and get to it and actually raise money. And many of you in this room helped contribute to that. And by the way, I'm going to say this. The fund talks about raising, giving away $225,000 in the last 5 years. It's really more like $500,000. If you add for the study, if, you know, really hiding under the bushel. This is not what we need to do as women's funds. Tell the full story. $500,000 has gone out in this fund, and it's not just about grant making, but it's about good research. It's about empowering those who are on the edges and in marginalized, and empowering them to be the voice. I do not need to speak for girls. You do not need to speak for girls. Girls can speak for themselves. They are one of the biggest assets we have, but we have continually think of them as a deficit. When we talk about girls, what do we talk about? Teen pregnancy, drug use, dropout. We don't talk about leadership, ideas, innovation, all the things that make a difference. That's where passion is. That's what this passion we're talking about. I remember once talking to a donor activist, very wealthy woman. She inherited money from her family. She'd taken it and built the business to triple times. By the way, she was one of 6, all 5 boys. She took the business and tripled it. Yeah, it was very interesting. She was very comfortable and proud of what she'd done with that with her family. But she said to me one day when we were in a private conversation, she had to tell you she had the opportunity to be serious about philanthropy, which for her focused on women and girls. It was only then, she said, that she felt for the first time in her life, she found purpose. For the first time in her life, she found purpose. And passion is a word that pushes that purpose out. It's a word, if you look at it, it can be a romantic connotation, it can be a strong feeling of love. Here's some of the words: zeal, fervor, fervency, emotion, intensity, spirit, vitality, exhilaration, eagerness, hunger, enthusiasm, vehemence. Any of those hit your passion button as you think about changing the lives of women and girls in Monterey County? Find the word that hits your button, that's most important, that it uncovers your passion. Because from this breakfast, you need to do a number of things. I'm going to say this over and over again. You need to write a check. And I can say that because you aren't writing it to me. You need to write a check. But you need to do some other things. You need to go out and tell somebody else about what you heard at this breakfast. And then you need to think about, how does your passion fuel, and how can you be a part of the story of the Women's Fund of Monterey County? Because if not you, who? If not you, who? But after passion then comes opportunity. Because passion without opportunity dies. Passion alone is not it. Opportunity provides us a place for our passion to grow and thrive. And the Women's Fund of Monterey County has provided that passion for you over the last 5 years. You've heard about all this incredible work of, you know, girls' health in girls' hands, of the microloan, of the MPC child care program. I mean, one could go on and on. I mean, that's a total of maybe $300,000–$400,000. You know, I just have to tell you, you've gotten a bargain here. You've gotten a bargain here. It's amazing the work that's been done for the amount of money. The problem is we can't sit on our laurels and say that's enough money, because it's not. We need to change. So right now they're talking about a $1.5 million endowment to get $75,000 a year. I'm going to say to you today, as I think Dan from the Community Foundation, you know, really think $5 million. Really, just go for the 5. Just go for the 5, because that gives you like $250,000 a year that you can give away and make a difference. I've seen it happen in other communities, and it can be done here as well. Now, in terms of opportunity, there are also some great words and phrases. Things like the right moment, perfect occasion, right set of circumstances, golden opportunity, once in a lifetime chance, striking while the iron is hot, getting while the getting is good, making hay while the sun shines. All of those things describe what opportunity is. This is the moment. This is your opportunity to make a difference. It's a call to action, to be a part of a movement within Monterey County that's going to make a difference for the whole county. What's amazing about this time in history is I've been involved in women's work for more years than you can count. Many more years than you can count. And in most of that time, it's been really hard just to get people to buy into women and girls, to say that they're critical and important. But now a lot of that's changed. The UN General Secretary says, as we know from long and indisputable experience, investing in women and girls has a multiplier effect on the productivity and sustainable economic growth. Or the Boston Consulting Group says, today 1 billion women work worldwide. More than half of college students are women. Women control half the wealth in the United States. And women will drive an incremental $5 trillion in global spending in the next years, several years, which represents the most important economic opportunity and commercial opportunity in the economic world around the globe. These kinds of statements were unthinkable when many of us started women's funds. They're the calling card for women's funds. I know it's important when you think about the work of women and girls to have that kind of backing. And, you know, for the work I did when I was at the Chicago Foundation for Women, or the 11 years I spent at the Women's Funding Network, I've seen this change. And some of the results of that is in the United Nations today, a year ago, they created UN Agency for Women that is headed by Michelle Bachelet, the former president of Chile. Goldman Sachs, you know, not a bastion of radicalism, may I say, gave $100 million to 10,000 women in the Southern Hemisphere. CARE campaign, We Are Powerful. And the most recent one that I think is stunning is the Nobel Peace Prize winners, 3 women, Tualiko Carmen, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and Lima Bawe, 1 from Yemen, 2 from Liberia, who won the Nobel Peace Prize. They were all supported in their beginnings by guess who? Women's funds. So, in the world of 6 degrees of separation, which is how everybody believes, but on the internet now it's 4.9. 4.9. You all are 3, well, some of you are only 2 degrees from there because I know 2 of them. 2 degrees of separation, but because you're part of the Women's Funding Movement, all of you are at least 3 degrees and no more separation from these women. That's what you're a part of. That's what today, it's not just about Monterey County. That's where you focus your attention. But know that you're a part of a much bigger piece of the pie. That is what it means when you get involved with women's funds. We did an initiative at Women's Funding Network in the last several years called Women Moving Millions, where we raised $200 million from many funds around the world in $1 million increments. And one of the reasons we were able to do that is because we moved donors from believing that they were just check writers to believing that they were investors. So they became not only check writers, but check writers and activists. And we all in this room can be both check writers and activists. Not just writing the check, but actually doing something about it. And if that means talking about it to your friends, bringing your friends to a breakfast like this next year, you know, go for 600, 500 people next year. Look at all the new people in the room. You add this group, add only 150 more, you all go out and ask, you have it done. That's what it means. That's what this kind of investment means. It's not so far away. And so when I come to you 5 years from now, then I'll be a really old lady. I want to talk about the $1 million you've given away over that time. The $1 million you've given away. Because imagine, think about what you've done with 225,000, with 400,000. What could you do with $1 million? It's stunning. Now, the investment is not only about how much you give, but is the gift that you're giving the biggest gift that you will allow? Sometimes we hear about Women Moving Millions, $1 million gifts, and we think, oh, what does my gift mean? Nothing. It's only, you know, 25, 100, 500, 1,000. Well, I will tell you a lesson I learned starting with my mother. Poor preacher's wife always said, first check of the month is always the check that goes for the cause. And then the journey will come along. So every day, every month, almost until she died, she would write out checks, 25 for human rights, 25 for world hunger, $50 for church, 25 for this advocacy group. It was her 10% give back. It was making a difference for her. And she gave what she had and gave it generously, not thinking that it wasn't enough, but always knowing that it was needed. So we don't need to think about it's not enough. We just need to think about what's needed. That's what needs to generate what we think about. Because she believed in something that I think all of us need to understand, and that's the democratization of philanthropy. Philanthropy does not belong only to those of wealth. Philanthropy belongs to all of us. And it's incumbent upon all of us to use that. I work with, one of my clients is a World Hunger organization connected to the Lutheran Church. And they raise $20 million a year and another 10 for disasters. But of that 20 million, 10 million of that are gifts under $500. 10 million of that are gifts under $500. So never ever think that your gift is not critical and important. Because part of Women's Fund is they leverage every single gift that comes through the door. Every single gift. Gifts of all size and shapes makes a difference because those gifts are leveraged. So we have passion, opportunity, investment, democratization of philanthropy. Your Women's Fund is at the nexus of all of those. And in the work, there is a passion for changing the world, for supporting women and girls. It's our opportunity for everybody to join in that. So here's the challenge I give to you today. I want you to think about your passion story. I want you to think about it particularly as it relates to women and girls. What brought you here today? There's an opportunity before you today, and what level of investment are you willing to make in the Women's Fund of Monterey County? This investment is both in a gift and a pledge. It's telling others the story of passion. It's how that passion is being fulfilled. And finally, it's embracing the democratization of philanthropy so that every person who walks out of this door today calls themselves a philanthropist. Because you are a part of making a difference. Over the years that I worked with the Women's Funding Network, I developed kind of a saying that's connected to a story, and I want to finish with that. This is a saying where there's an old saying, give a person a fish and they eat for a day, teach a person to fish and they eat for a lifetime. Well, the way that women's funds talk about it is give a woman a fish, she'll feed her family and possibly go hungry. Teach a woman to fish, she'll feed her family until she loses her fishing rights or the lake gets dirty. Give women the resources to buy the lake, they'll feed their families, preserve the lake for generations to come and keep it clean. Women's funds need to be about buying the lake, and together we'll be stronger and more powerful. You all, over the last 5 years, have put a down payment on that lake. Now with the new endowment fund, your passion for women and girls needs you to get ready to own that lake, making a difference here in Monterey County. Thank you very much.
Well, we really see women as kind of the lens through which whole communities become healthy. So when you invest in a woman, you invest in a family, you invest in a community, and therefore you invest in a country. So when a woman is economically secure, a family is, a community is, a country is. So it's a lens by which the kind of change that we all want in our communities, where we have the umbrella of the human security, where there's economic security, access to health care, access to education, freedom from violence, human rights. Those are all the things all of us ask for in our communities across the world, whether you're in Africa or you're in Monterey County. People want to feel like they live in a safe place, like their families are growing up in a safe place. So we see women as kind of the window through which you go to make that change. And then of course girls are critical because they are both the present and the future leaders. So investing in them, seeing them as an asset rather than a deficit, like problems. If you see them as an asset, like the Women's Fund has here in Monterey County, then you begin to open up a whole new world of possible leadership. Giving by women is critical for a number of reasons. One, it's kind of the last glass ceiling. That women philanthropists, and by the way, we already know that at least 50% of the wealth in this country is in the name of women. So people would be smart to begin to talk to women about their philanthropy. So that's one piece of it. But the second piece of it is philanthropy is a way for you to actually put your values into the community. So if you value healthy communities, then you need to not only volunteer for that, but you need to write a check for that. Because philanthropy is a way in which we create communities with a whole set of values that we have. Men have been doing this for years. Men have been putting their value stamp on communities by writing big checks. Now women have the opportunity to do that. So while women are both disproportionately impacted by violence and poverty, they also have the resources to change that. And that's why women need to open up their checkbooks, write the biggest check they possibly can, make a difference in the lives of women and girls, and they will then be making the difference in investing in their own lives and the lives of their family and community.